Hey everybody, Jason Burmis here. You're watching 24 videos in 24 hours because, hey, we don't know if we're going to be here after midnight, seeing YouTube has changed its terms of services effective at midnight on the 10th, aka Tuesday, where if you're not commercially viable, they can just decide to kick you off the platform, delete your channel. And I figured if I was going to go out, I'm going out with a bang. I am trying to stay on this platform as it is bigger than television. And I've had some great guests on today. But it is my astute pleasure to finally have Scott Ledger on my program, a man who I have known now almost a decade, Scott. I want to say I did your show for the first time maybe in 2011, 2012. Dangerous Conversation, and it's recently come to terrestrial radio in Florida via Florida Man Radio. How are you, Scott?
Hey, man. Thanks for having me, and it's great to finally be the guest.
Absolutely, man. I'm so happy to have you, brother. So why don't you tell people how your journey began into this kind of controversial talk radio? Because traditionally, you're kind of like a rock DJ.
Yeah. I grew up in a small northern Connecticut farm town, raised in a strict Catholic family. Grew up fairly naive and just lived my life, but I visited a radio station when I was 13. I knew that's what I wanted to do. Went to the Connecticut School of Broadcasting, paid my dues, moved up through the ranks, ended up in Miami, and then out of Springfield, Mass, then to Miami. Used to listen to Howard Stern growing up in high school on CCC. So I had a lot of different influences, but I knew I wanted to get on a microphone, and I found myself in Tampa Bay. And then I was just rock jocking. I had a great station called 98 Rock, and then later on a classic rocker. And I came into work. I was doing middays. I came into work at Thunder in 2001 in September. And I came in, and the television was on. The morning show was on, and it was obviously built. The North Tower had been hit. And, you think, tremendous tragedy near 3 different big airports. This stuff could happen, yada, yada. And then all of a sudden, we see we were told was Flight 175 at the South Tower about 20 minutes later. And I found myself on the air doing middays. We were told at the time we were still Clear Channel, you cannot, no running commercials, no running music. And essentially what we used to do is, a lot of radio stations do, is we would have the television feed of one of our affiliates, but we would pipe that audio into our mixing console so we could pot it up or turn it up. And at that day, I didn't even get on the air. Morning show didn't even leave the air until like 1, and I hung out with them. So I remember being on the air that day and watching those buildings, and in the back of my mind, I truly knew that something was wrong. I knew ninth grade physics. I knew that buildings like that couldn't do that thing. And then later on, we had the CBS feed potted up. There's Dan Rather talking about Building 7. And nothing registered because I was all wrapped up in the emotions of how many people had died. And next thing you know, and up to that point, Jason, I was kind of like you, was just going along and getting along in my life. And I really didn't want to pay attention because I was too busy living my own life. And about 4 years later, a guy that I saw you do a video about earlier in the day, Alex Jones, was on this funky little website, and he was playing a loop of Building 7 collapsing, and that was my red pill moment, and that's when my intellect and my soul journey kicked in. And like they say, the rest is history. I found documentaries by the old guys before even you guys, Dave Von Kleist and Eric Hufschmid and some of the very early people in the 9/11 movement that were producing videos, and later on it was Zeitgeist and Loose Change and other things, and then a lot of the stuff that you did and Alex had produced. And I found myself in that crossroads of you're a media person. What are you going to do with your talent? Are you going to shut up and go along and get along, or are you going to fight the good fight and take the road less traveled? And that's later on how DC, or is what we call Dangerous Conversation, was spawned. Ended up on the internet, and you're right, 2011. That's when I found you on Twitter, and that's how we know each other, brother.
And it's been a love fest ever since. I absolutely loved going on your program back,
Yeah.
especially when it was on Radio IO, and it was a little more edgy. You know, you get away with a little bit more than what you could say on terrestrial radio. That's why I like this platform, because I'm able to speak my mind, and maybe when I get a hair angry, I'm able to let loose, drop a couple fuck bombs, Ledge. You know, let people know how I really feel about
Yeah.
the situation. And now that we've got your backstory, how do you feel about this situation of YouTube now saying, hey, it doesn't matter if you haven't violated our terms of service. We are the sole discretionary, and we will decide whether or not you are allowed to keep a channel.
You know, the thing that all this spawns from is 9/11 and the Homeland Security Act and the NSA's powers that were granted. And then later on, it's just slowly, incrementally mushroomed into what you call the trace, track, and database. And now it's almost assumed that no matter what you do or what you say is going to be monitored. But I was okay with that as long as the free speech was allowed to flow in the other direction. Once the YouTube pages and the Twitter pages and the independent media sources and all their websites were out there pumping out, questioning the matrix, I was all for it. And then we saw pretty much after Trump was elected, we started to see the screws tighten on Facebook and Twitter and YouTube. And, you know, we even saw Joe Rogan, you know, with the CEO of Twitter on there looking like a deer in the headlights. And that's when I started to say, wow, the system is really pushing back. Now, I think two things about that. Gandhi said, first they laugh at you, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win. Now, if you look at that, it's true. So we're in stage 3, because now they're fighting back and they're trying to squash words like yours and some of the other people we've already mentioned. And to me, that kind of lights my juices a little, because, like, look at these sons of bitches are fighting back. Now, the downside is the platform, you know, you check the yes box, I adhere to all this, but these fuckers keep moving the goalpost and changing the rules, and this is why you're doing 24 and 24. So I like the idea they're fighting, because as history shows, you can step back as what I call the 10,000-foot view and look at the Greeks or the Romans, and you can see empire crumbling. You can see how they try to retain power, debasing currency and expanding military. And here we are again in 2019, and you're seeing the same type of history play out, except we get it in real time because it's right there at our fingertips. So as much as I don't like the censorship, I do like it because the sons of bitches are getting scared, bro. They're nervous now because Hillary said we're in an information war and we're losing. And that was a few years back. So all I can say is to everybody that listens to your podcast or watches your show is keep fighting. Knowledge is power. This is how we expand consciousness. We don't expand consciousness by going into the dark. We expand it by getting into the light. So, dude, I'm kind of jazzed about what's going on. I still am. Just like I was back in 2011 when I first met you.
Well, I don't know, man. I'm hoping that we're going to be able to get through this. You know, you just brought up Hillary Clinton, and you were talking about new media versus old media, and I can't help but want to get your take on her 2+ hour interview with Howard Stern. Now, I only watched about half of it, but it was pretty repulsive to me as a guy who followed Stern my whole life, who read his first 2 books, who was actually looking forward to reading Howard Comes Again. And, you know, Brett Hatley is his producer. We follow each other on Twitter. And obviously, you know Brett from the Radio IO network and the Bubba the Love
Actually, I'm sorry to interrupt, but Brett Hatley started off as my intern at 98 Rock. That's how long ago that was.
Exactly. And, you know, Brett has always really leaned libertarian. You know, that interview was anything but libertarian, and it was very hard for me to watch. And it also shows me that Hillary is still trying to leverage what I would call the legacy media in her favor, maybe reach out to what Howard's audience mainly is now, 40 to 70-year-olds. Let's be honest, Ledge.
Yeah. You know, like I said, when I was a senior in high school, Howard was on WCCC. If you watch the movie Private Parts, you see that's his real first gig in a big market out of college radio in New York. And I used to listen to him. And then, of course, if anybody who follows Howard Stern realizes it was Howard against the establishment, the FCC in this case, free speech, the Carlin's 7 dirty words, all of that. And Howard was anti-establishment. I mean, that was the backbone of what Howard was. But George Carlin said it's a big club, and you and I aren't in the big club. And when you sign a contract like Howard has for $500 million, and next thing you know, you're friends with, half the people you wouldn't even want to talk to 30 years ago because you despise those people because you realize they weren't the solution, they were part of the problem. And I don't want to diss Howard on his radio skills. He'll always be a hero to me. I do, at least for who knows how much longer, I do what Howard does, and I learn from him how to build a crew, how to build a flow, how to find the hot point topic and make sure it's hit from all angles. DC was never about telling you what to think. It was only encouraging you to think, you to specifically think. And I'm not, listen, I saw Howard's trajectory and I realized this is where he was going to land. And he used to be the king of all media, but right now I call him the king of all softballs because that's what he does. He's a softball.
I wish I could disagree with you there, but I would really say that you're correct. I'll probably still read the book. I'm not looking forward to it as much, but I also look at Hillary positioning herself on the Stern Show and having Howard release the entire thing on YouTube, which he does with none of his interviews. Nobody gets that treatment. So you have to wonder, Ledge, do you think this is a play for her to sneak into the 2020 election under the Democratic Party, which their establishment candidates of Joey B and Grandma fucking Oatmeal look unelectable? So is she going to slither in with a Bloomberg ticket or what?
Here's my theory. They started with 22 candidates. Mm-hmm. I'm not necessarily a Bernie bro, but I am realizing that he's been consistent. Say what you will about some of his socialist ideas and where it might be funded, but I do know this: the DNC, fucked him over, and we all know what the Podesta emails and what Julian Assange printed. And by the way, thank you for carrying the flag for Assange, because both sides of the establishment don't like him anymore. You got to remember, when he was going after Bush, the Dems loved Julian Assange, but then when he went after the DNC, he made enemies on both sides of the fence, and now he doesn't really have anybody having his back. But what he did was he put that information out there that, this is why, Bernie was dissed, and this is how the HR, Wasserman Schultz and everything that happened back then in 2016. And you can go into Seth Rich, like you and I might do in a separate conversation, and realize that this is where all the Russiagate came from, because they couldn't let all that dirt out, so they had to blame somebody for the loss. So now Hillary comes in, she's already dissing Bernie again, and I really think the DNC is anybody but Bernie. So when they put 22 people into the mix, it's because, somebody gets 1%, somebody gets 3%, somebody gets 2%. If there were only 7 or 8 people in the mix, you might see some higher numbers towards Tulsi Gabbard, who's my girl anyway, in what I would call picking in the left-right paradigm, and then Bernie. And because, let's face it, the Dems are now centrists, they're now basically neo-libs, and I think Hillary is in to do the same thing, because they've lost some of their, we saw, what's her name, Camilla dropped out a couple of days ago. So we're seeing the watering down of the thing, of the amount of people is now getting a little bit too concentrated, and they don't want. Well, look at Biden. I mean, God bless him, he's losing his mind, and I don't mean that as a joke. I mean that this is a man suffering dementia. It's easy to see, and I don't want to make a joke of his illness, but that's the man leading the fray. So Hillary, I don't know if Hillary's going in thinking we can try to win. I think she's just in it again to water it down from people like, let's say, Bernie or Tulsi. That's my theory anyway.
Well, I think there is a water down, and in that interview with Stern, she actually said that the Russians liked Bernie and they worked on behalf of him as well, which was just more of her treacherous, lying bullshit. But at the same time, Bernie won in 2016. He won the 2016 nomination from the Democrats and didn't have the spine to stand up to them and speak the truth, and that's why I can't get behind him. Scott Ledger, dangerous conversation. We live in a world where you don't need to live in Florida and listen to him live on terrestrial radio, but you can still listen to him live, I believe, via iHeartRadio.
Well, actually, we'd prefer you just go to our app. Just type in Florida Man Radio. Now, remember, I'm back in terrestrial, so if you were a fan of DC back in the day, very short-form interviews. We are a centrist, in other words, local to Orlando, Florida, and we have one affiliate in Gainesville where we're adding sticks. But basically, sometimes it's just D and fart jokes, and other times it's serious conversation because I'm an entertainer. I'm paid to entertain an audience, so sometimes it's a little bit watered down. And you might find me on one day where we're just talking about, Santa Claus sweaters that have lines of cocaine on them, and other times we're talking about serious subject matter like the police shooting in South Florida the other day, where 19 police officers emptied 200 rounds into a vehicle, and so I have to waver back.
Is that the UPS truck one you're talking about?
Say that again, Bill?
Are you talking about the UPS truck incident?
Yeah. When you think about 19 cops emptying over 200 rounds into a vehicle, you wonder who was in charge, what was the protocol.
When there was a hostage in there, Ledge, an unarmed hostage who was the actual driver who lost his life. Yeah, I think it's insane.
Yeah, I'm sensing some sarcasm from you there, but the video that really kills me is as these cops are approaching this vehicle, they are using other people's vehicles who were pulled over on the side of the road with the people still in the vehicles as cover.
Yeah. No, I wasn't being sarcastic. My point being,
cover.
Yeah, no, I get it.
That's really where I went, and I kind of flew off the handle.
Well, I would say this, even beyond that, which it was disgusting, Legend, there was a live human being there who was doing his job that had his car taken, and he was a hostage. What would have been the worst thing to let this guy get away? Maybe that guy's life gets taken in the hostage situation. More than likely, he gets let go at some point, but instead, he loses his life, and these cops use civilian cars as cover in the heat of the moment. I think the decision was very poor indeed. Scott, I want to thank you so much for finally coming on the program. I'm going to hold you to coming back sometime in the next few months, and I know that I will be live sometime in the next few weeks on your program, correct?
Yes, you will. You are a regular and have been a staple because you're kind of the rabbit hole diver that I bring on my show, because we like, as you like to do, go beyond the left-right paradigm. As you always like to say, it's not left versus right, it's right versus wrong. And if we're ever going to elevate ourselves as a species, as a country, as a collective, and I don't mean that in collective thinking, I mean that as a species, if we're ever going to get to truth, then we have to look for new answers from everything from energy and money systems, and specifically, and this is my bread and butter, media, and this is why I love new media, because I worked in terrestrial media for so long, and once Clinton signed deregulation, I was in that. It happened to me. I saw what was happening in the industry, especially in the build-up to war. I was right down the hallway from Glenn Beck and other people that were beating the war drums, and my conscience said, not only was I born to be in this matrix and play the role I'm playing, but people like Jason Burmis and other people who had the matrix come to them didn't run away from it. People that support your program, I can't encourage them enough. Throw the guy $5, $10. That's the bottom line here, folks. Is if you want people out there seeking truth, they got to put bread and butter on the table too. So if you like the content of what Jason does, and there's no reason why you shouldn't, make sure you take care of him so he can take care of our brains and our conscious, man. Bro, I'm gonna slip back and get a cold one, but I want to thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for having me on your program, and just keep up the fight, bro.
You're the man, Ledge. I love you. I'll talk to you soon. Thank you again.
All right, thanks again. Good night.
So guys, if you do want to support me, please thumbs this video up, share it with others, give it the thumb it up, share it with others, and subscribe. Join the Burmis Brigade. If you believe in real media that goes beyond the left-right paradigm, if you're enjoying these 24 videos in 24 hours, by the way, it's about to be 25 videos in 24 hours. As I said, there was a little mix-up in times, but now I'm going to have the Conscious Resistance coming up in 14 minutes. That's how we're doing it. We're doing it live. And we're doing 25 videos in 24 hours. Guys, if you do want to financially support me, that's the way to do it. The GoFundMe, $5, $10, $15 means the world to me. I'm going to let you guys go, And I'll see you in less than 15 minutes with Derek Bros of the Conscious Resistance on the flip side. Thank you guys so much.